So thank you, Aparna. Thank you so much. I really like the topic of the session, which says that, hold on, I'm going to share my screen. And that's what we say every 2 hours to our students. Today we are going to discuss so many things in this panel discussion, and my, co-panelists are going to also focus on adaptation and online teaching. But before we do that, we'll be just introducing about the pros and cons and the scopes and the challenges of the online education in India. So if you read the Knight Foundation's report, they rightly pointed out, that the lack of currency and innovation in the curriculum and the lack of facilities as well as the faculty expertise in new media, as the new media challenges of journalism education, they are growing. So generally, teaching in the digital age is thought more in the terms of technology, with emphasis on applied than on the conceptual learning, and striking a balance, between the two. That has been a major challenge. So the major challenge, one of the major challenges, leveraging technology in the journalism education, and we integrate digital experiences across the media. There's a need to develop creativity and storytelling abilities. So teaching technology know-how to produce skilled personnel is very, very essential. So the technology adaptation, or adoption, I would say, will be challenging for all the educational institutes in India in terms of investment, in terms of skill development. So inevitably, the journalism education, it has to focus on skill development and induce digital mindsets in the students also. So this year at IIMC, I used to head IIMC Delhi only, and I used to have around 70 students, 68 students. And in the physical classroom, we used to take care of each and every aspect of their learning, whether it was news writing or it was, developing storytelling abilities, or data journalism, or mobile journalism, or artificial journalism, or drone journalism. And students were very happy. But in the digital era, when we are taking online classes, what are the challenges that I faced this year? I'm going to just, tell you about that also. So this year, all the campuses of IIMC, whether it was Aizawl, or it was Kottayam, or it was Jammu, or it was Amravati Center, or it was Dhenkanal Center, all the students were, we were having centralized classes. So I was course director for all the students, around 170 students. So it was really, really a very big challenge for me. So we, first of all, we made two sections, and then, started conducting online classes. I saw that there were many benefits also, that we could make anybody and everybody join from other countries, to give them a perspective. For example, we had a 1 week long workshop on investigative journalism, where the resource person was Miss Linda Roth. She's an award-winning investigative journalist, and also the vice president of Wilson Center in US. So I saw that there were many, many benefits, that we could connect to anybody, and students got the benefit of learning from experts. We also conducted another seminar along with the University of Newcastle, and we that seminar was based on women entrepreneurship. So we called leading women entrepreneurs from India, and we had a very good discussion. So there are things that we enjoyed, we did for the first time, and but there were certain things that we couldn't do, or we couldn't do to that extent that we used to do in the physical classes. Like if you talk about the digital era, data journalism tools, and a professional digital studio with the latest equipments, that enable the learning by doing. Artificial intelligence, if you see, which is the future of technology segment in creating content, and will transform media beyond recognition, we would say. So different segments like, piracy, illegal file sharing, or blockchain technology, bots, data governance, piracy management, fact checking, blocking of fake news, or gatekeeping, misinformation, disinformation. So virtual production techniques, they're all the potential areas of education and training. We here at English Journalism, we produce niche lab journals every week. So on weekly basis, students produce lab journals on defense, on crime, be it on parliament, or on all the different beats. They work on development journalism, they work on child rights, they work on say uh, matlab, all the beats that are there, they are producing the lab journals for those beats. And we experienced that happened, 165 or 70 students that we had this year, they had produced around 108 lab journals this year. So that was productive. But what I felt was the challenge was that, when we were teaching them InDesign here in the classroom, it was altogether a different experience. The mentor was teaching them, they were producing, they were designing the papers, and then they were knowing how to do that. So the softwares, they didn't have the softwares. So when we were teaching them online, we had to hire somebody who could provide softwares to the students, for a limited period of 1 month when they were learning. So we have had classes this semester also for Illustrator, for Corel Draw, for InDesign, for all the softwares that we thought they were essential for the students. But yes, there was a problem when the students said, "Ma'am, we are trying, but we are not able to make that page." Practically, by learning gradually, they could produce it. And final result was that we have had around 108 lab journals. Similarly, we produce magazines. So in the last 2 years, our department produced a magazine called Odyssey, where people were, interviewing journalists. So my students interviewed 100 journalists, and we produced one, magazine, department magazine, which was called as Odyssey. Next year also, we produced another Odyssey by interviewing another, a set of 100 journalists. So this year, the students, they couldn't go and personally interview. So that feel was missing. But then this year we interviewed 100 RJs. So we have produced our Odyssey with an interview of 100 RJs. But then again, the designing part took long, because they were not experts in designing as the previous batches were. So if you talk about other things, as blockchain, we had classes on blockchain, we had classes on artificial intelligence, we had on data security, and mobile journalism, we had classes on. We also had classes on drone journalism, so workshops. So in the previous years, when we had a workshop on drone journalism, we tied up with the Indian Air Force first, and then we had classes on drone flying also. But that experience of flying the drone went missing this year. So there are many pros, there are many cons of the digital education. We could connect to the world, we could connect to UK, we could connect to US, we could connect to Australia professors, and we had the best of lectures. But some practical part, which we made the best of efforts to do, that also went, missing. So as you all know, that training in mobile journalism is the journalist's new avatar, which we all call as Mojo. And smartphones, they define mobile journalism. And we are used to journalists, they use it for maybe radio news, or podcasts, or TV news, or for social media news. So the new form of storytelling has emerged, and traditionalists in newsroom and classrooms should also adopt Mojo. And Mojo makes for more inclusive journalism, bringing in diversity in content and in presentation as well. Data journalism, we had classes on data journalism, and it is at the heart of journalism education in the digital age. So it is beyond computational skills to handle data for serving humanity, protecting freedom of speech, human rights, civic liberties, gender equality, equity, and maybe sustained development. And digital industry, it reinforces a functionalist approach to journalism education, and technology is overwhelming in digital media, so which is dominated by different layers of voice penetrating every day. So education in the digital era, which has primarily taken the form of, say, virtual classroom education, but in reality, it is much more than and much beyond that. And we have to keep pace with the fast changing technologies and accommodate ever evolving concerns and challenges, that the media curriculums need to be updated. So more frequently, we introduce at IIMC, we introduce all the emerging technologies as in the curriculum itself, so that people or the students, when they go out, they are experts in data journalism, they are experts in mojo, they are experts in artificial intelligence, or if not experts, then at least they have a fair idea of what it is and how it is going to be implemented. So whether it is the new developments in the form of artificial intelligence, automated journalism, we had classes on AR and VR, and mobile journalism, data science, um, you know, drone, as I told you, social media handling, mobile applications, etc. So more significant is to update the media teachers also. The recommendations that I saw from many media educators recently is that the teachers should also get the training, because the problem lies somewhere with the teachers as well. Here at IMC, all right, we have the liberty to call people from the industry, so we are calling many experts from different industries, so our student is becoming a one man army. But we also need trained teachers in our educational institutes, so it is not only the refresher course and the orientation course that's going to help. So I think I suggest that teachers should also update their themselves by reading, updating themselves, taking short courses, and uh, you know they should be they promoting themselves to acquire new skills basically. So this will help them to remain relevant and contemporary, and more participatory approaches in pedagogy would help engage media students in a better way, and that will also retain their attention for a longer period. So when the smartphone has become the most ubiquitous device for accessing media content, so training students to select the right kind of content has also become all the more important. So through the online education, uh, we can make anything and everything happen. The only thing is, what we miss is the physical classrooms, the feel of the physical classroom, the teachings, the interaction, the you don't even know. You cannot make it mandatory to switch on the videos all the time, because our classes are from, say, 10 o'clock to 5 o'clock, and you never know, these children, the students, they are what, roaming or eating, or uh, maybe sleeping, or whatever they are doing, whether they have full attention to your lecture or not, which was there in the classroom. So, though the online education got thrust on all during and because of the pandemic, so it is here to stay for a while. So, in such a situation, acknowledging and addressing the digital disparity will be of prime, importance. So, limited participation of and interaction with students is a major challenge, as I said, in the virtual classrooms, even when the best of equipment and internet connectivity is there. But the problems are further magnified when the students are from diverse backgrounds. So in person classes, they can ensure equality in terms of accessibility to equipment or the computer lab and infrastructure. But online education, however, they have brought differences and digital divide and inequalities to the fore. And students living in disadvantaged communities and remote areas, they face numerous adversities like lack of maybe equipment and surroundings, or they don't have a separate room to study, or the surroundings which are conducive to learning, or lack of electricity supply, internet connectivity, uh, money for that matter, because some people lost their jobs. So I would just say that uh, these online teachings are useful, but there should be a blended mode of learning in the times to come. Even if we stick by digital and online education, there should be a blended mode, and we should have at least some portion of practical, that the students are coming to the institutes and learning that part. So we have both pros and cons. We have both scopes and challenges to the online education in India. I'll come back to you and we'll discuss more. Meanwhile, I would like my co-panelists also to speak for a while before we discuss the other parameters.
Yeah, so I would, I'm clearly the odd one out in the panel because I'm the only sort of working journalist, so to speak. My perspective would probably stem from my my experience in the newsroom only. Although I've had a couple of stints teaching journalism both at IIJNM and ACJ, but currently also I'm trying to uh, start something as an online uh, education for working journalists as well. I'll try and fit all of that in this brief intervention of mine. While I listen to Dr. Surbi, and I know that a lot of effort goes into molding a student to come out and be useful on day one in a newsroom. It's often seen that there's I wouldn't like to judge, but I would just say that there is a lot of gap between what the student is expecting, given the training that he's had and what he or she has had, and what uh, the newsroom can offer. So, and I think that is what. So it does not relate to whether you're online or offline. The larger question that really is that on journalism education has to confront or contend with is that you've had different kinds of journalism from before. You've had print journalism, you've had broadcast or digital in its broad sense, but with the emergence of digital in the manner especially in the past probably half a decade, you have different kinds of online journalism too. So you can have like the earlier speaker was saying that your emphasis on mobile journalism. Yeah, there are economic reasons why you have that, but you can be in a newsroom with a massive infrastructure, but still emphasizing on one aspect of it is mobile journalism, the other is data journalism. So you have different teams, but most of them get hired by probably the most menial of it, of uploading stories. In fact, I found that term, like uploader, the most demeaning. That is what people are initially expected to do, at least, and it happens for a few years. So this reality that is there uh, uh, is also tied up with the kind of economic situation that exists outside. If you're my experience, for instance, in Hindustan Times, okay, you have a big board out there telling you the numbers. So why the emphasis on page views and not on engagement is something that journalism education should deal with. And it's again, I'm just trying to emphasize the fact that it's not necessary that these things can be either offline or online, but it is these things that shape how journalists are going to work in the newsroom, and how therefore journalism is affected as a consequence. So if you are concentrating on page views and users, maybe, so the kind of impact that you'd have on looking at, what is the trending story, and therefore what is your response as a newsroom to that trending story, that defines the kind of journalism that happens. In contrast, now, for instance, the engagement, where how much do you read? How much does our average reader consume content? It's a debatable term, but they use the content. So uh, these things have not been really addressed by journalism education. What is the impact of analytics, as I said, and the so analytics has an impact because big tech has intervened and defined for you what metrics you have to be bothered about, and on the other side, big tech has defined what your site should be and have from an SEO perspective. And most people would have heard the idea of search engine optimization. So what is the impact of SEO on journalism? And for that, I think it is essential for journalism educators to actually have that in connection with newsrooms. There has to be, it's not just about sending some students for internships. It's not about trying to say, these are the different kinds of journalism, and that's what it is. Or you explain either what mobile journalism is in a few classes, or you teach data journalism with an Excel or a database. So you actually have to look at the reality that exists right now, because that is what they do see. And so while that I'm not trying to indict anything. I'm just saying that this is something that is food for thought for journalism educators, and for students also to be warned, in a sense, that you should expect that when you go out there are different kinds of institutions and the different kinds of challenges that you will be faced. But these are some of the givens, and you need to kind of equip yourself for that. And so there is no disappointment that happens, because as we see, as this turmoil is underway, both with the pandemic as well as the sort of socio-political economic disturbance that is on right now. I've also known quite a few young, just recently graduated colleagues of mine who said, we want to leave journalism for good. So I would be very concerned about that. And I think that is where journalism educators should come in. And in terms of, you know, the uh, the ability to actually get this transferred, digital is very good. It's probably natural, and so journalism institutions should have the digital extension or the online extensions of their course material available. It's like I've installed something like a Moodle. It's an open source thing which hardly costs much, and you can have an extensive curriculum and course structure out there that would be available for journalists or aspiring journalists as well. And you could also have something like a plugin in a WordPress site So it is going to be ubiquitous. It is going to be possible for many people to be able to have these, extensions of journalism education there, and how, therefore, you would respond. Because I think most of you all, and I'm talking to the panelists here, you come from established organizations with the ability to, bank on that and get the word out in a probably more structured manner. So how you kind of would employ that to reach out, I think the digital, medium offers that. And so I think that also ties in with the fact that if you're able to actually look at the realities as in case studies, how Hindustan Times integrated their newsroom and sort of maybe disintegrated it to an extent, and then they're going to their own. How did the Hindu do it? How does Express do it? These and the smaller ones too. Scoop Whoop, and because they're big hirers. Ultimately, quite a few kids end up in these smaller institutions. So you that outreach probably is required. And before I end, I think, yeah, I think I'll stop there. And if you have any questions, I would love to address it when the questions come by.
It's really an honor to be on this panel along with several of my esteemed colleagues and very experienced educators, media educators. All of you come with a very, very strong journalistic background. And I think this is where I differ a little, because my training has been as a management graduate, because I've done an MBA. And I went on to work in marketing, communication, and journalism before I did my PhD in customer communication. So I would like to believe that journalism is a part of the larger communication process, which I think this pandemic has really affected the media education or the communication education, which is slightly more holistic than pure play journalism. So that's where I'm going to pitch this presentation. Of course, there's a lot of merit in all that we have been saying and all that we have been discussing in several fora. But let me see how to make this whole. Let me play the positive devil's advocate for a change. When COVID struck, I think all of us were dumbstruck because we didn't know how to react. We had no clue what was going on. We thought initially it was for a few days and then probably for a few weeks, which became a few months. And then it's almost a year and a half, and we are still sitting and discussing online as to whether it's good or bad. I'm reminded of a story. This actually happened to one of my very close friends. In fact, when I was talking to him about this meet, he said, probably you should use this example. He said, my grandfather is a traditionalist who always believed in wearing the traditional dhoti. And then suddenly one day, his grandson who lived in the US gifted him a pair of rugged jeans, which he was very hesitant to wear because he said, no, this is not what I like. But then the grandson was persistent and he wore it. And then he started liking it gradually. At first, he was uncomfortable. He's close to 80, but now he insists that he wants more such pairs of jeans, which he can wear and walk around in a society. Now, our case is somewhat like that. We don't know whether COVID was a boon or a bane, especially to the education sector. Now, it all depends on which side we see ourselves on. I'm sure we are all aware of all the e-learning platforms that have mushroomed. Coursera, FutureLearn, including UGC's Swayam, Udemy, and maybe even the smallest one, which is UpGrad, which is very few years old. They have enrolled lakhs of students online. They claim to have hundreds and thousands of mentors. And believe me, they're all doing so well. So what does the pandemic mean to us in a way? Is it really only for big businesses, or is it an opportunity for us to look at what we have been doing for so long and then probably change the way we have been teaching? I believe there's a lot of learning in this, because many years back, I'm sure we all recall that we had remote learning in the form of distance learning or correspondence courses, where we would study the notes, the students would study the notes, prepare assignments, present them by post, right? There were no printouts. They would handwrite the assignments and send them by post to the whoever the course director was, and attend contact classes, say, every 3 months in the nearest college. So the focus there, the need and the onus was on the student to excel, which drove them to distance learning and correspondence and made it successful. But today, the same model is used, but with technology that has bridged this gap. I believe that technology has enabled better reach, has introduced flexibility in the entire learning system, but the onus is still on the student to excel. Unlike the corporates, where the onus and the focus is on the company's profitability. So you attend a meeting because you want to, say, cut a deal, but here the student has to attend an online class because it's going to benefit the student directly. Now, I don't see any difference between the corporate setup and the setup in classrooms or e-classrooms today. Why should the classrooms still be a 9 to 4 or a 9 to 5 affair where you sit along with 30 or 40 others, or maybe 100 others, depending on the college or course, and pretend to be interested, right? Can we reimagine education? Can we not just teach, but probably discuss? We can debate, we can analyze. When we do phone calls, we do very long phone calls. We discuss probably the whole lot of things in this universe. It can be politics, social issues. It can be even family matters, but we do it all on a phone call, right? So why are we getting inhibited with technology? It should actually be an enabler. Nothing stops us. But of course, we have a legacy of 100, 150 years of education, which sometimes prevents us. Now, let me quickly share. I know we have just about 10 minutes. Let me quickly share what we did at Comets. Like I said, Comets is not just a journalism college, because we also offer public relations, advertising, event management, audiovisual communication, films, and all of that. I thought that gave us an edge over pure play journalism training, because it allowed us to replicate corporate life for the students. Because most of the time, students who work in, say, agencies or companies, they do calls, they discuss with their superiors or their supervisors, or they have international calls, right? So we brought in that focus to our classes. We said, we would not want them to focus only on, say, the process, but actually look at the outcomes. We repurposed learning as a personal experience instead of a large classroom experience. Yes, the students are still available online to interact with each other, but finally the learning was always personal. We extensively used videos, films, and documentaries in practically every subject, including a paper like research methodology, marketing, advertising, development, communication, most of which were used for discussions and debates. We shared them the videos or the links. We encouraged them to watch it at their own pace, at their own space and convenience, and come back with questions and come back for discussion. And I think that to a large extent helped us to keep the classes interesting and not make them believe or feel that they lacked in something when online classes became a reality. We did away for our evaluations. We did away with MCQs. We did away with the regular class tests, and instead focused on extensive live research-based presentations, which they had to actually make in front of professionals and defend their presentations, defend their ideas, defend their views. We said, you don't have to submit assignments to us online. Instead, blog your assignments. So we made blogging compulsory for assignments, not just to put out something that they thought, but actually to share their views on the topics that were given to them. Uh, so I want to believe that all these things suddenly opened up the opportunity of using digital media in a more productive manner, in a more, how shall I call it, in a more useful manner, where they never felt or they never thought that they lacked in something, including their practical work, where they were encouraged to use their mobile phones or videos and photographs. They wrote their scripts online, emailed it to us, which we corrected and sent it back. The course directors were constantly with them, even while they shot. When we can do a video call and speak with a, yes, Dr. Surbi?
No, I have just raised a hand. I was indicating about the time. Sorry.
Sorry?
I said I just raised a hand.
Okay.
I was giving you an indication for time.
Yeah, how long do I
You
have?
can please wrap up your.
Sure. I will. Maybe give me just a couple of minutes.
Sure.
Okay. So the point I'm trying to make is we have traditionally been preparing students for exams that will probably fetch them a degree or a certificate. And I think that needs to change. And I think the pandemic, the digital platforms have given us that, where the students can realize the value of the classrooms and the training and the discussions, even online, and not necessarily worry about a physical space. So this is, I think, the thought that I want to leave behind. Look at a company like Byju's, which totally changed the way kids looked at education. Right? They said online is everything, mobile is everything. So I think that is what we need to also adopt and adapt as media educators. Focus more on the learning outcomes, the practical value of what they are learning, rather than teaching, which somehow rhymes with preaching, which many people don't, students don't really like. So that's my submission. I'm sorry if I've exceeded the time. Again, I'll be happy to take questions in the end. Thank you.
Good morning to all of you, and thank you, Dr. Surbi Daya, for that introduction. And I would also like to thank the management and the staff of the Media Department of Media Studies at Christ University for organizing this at a very timely meeting, something that we need to discuss about. Yes, the COVID-19 pandemic has raised some significant challenges for higher education, I feel. I agree with my co-panelists that it was something that we had to cope up overnight. We were literally caught off guards that we would have to shift to a virtual mode. Yes, but most of us who were teaching, the virtual teaching was not so much practiced by us than it has been practiced globally. And the pandemic brought in a lot of advice for teachers. Much of this advice, which focused on tools and materials that teachers can use to replace face-to-face teaching, and which is also happening right now. In addition, most of these tips that came in for teachers were without contextualizing the knowledge needed to judge what would be applicable for which teacher. And yes, we all, adapted it quickly. We, went in for online teaching. We had various platforms which we could use. And the first challenge itself was about identifying the right platform for teaching. Because, there were so many there was a variety of platforms available, and we were experimenting, and then we all narrowed down, like at MIC, we finally narrowed down to MS Teams, and that's what we are using. And, initially, like Dr. Sai Prasad said, we all thought it would just be a few weeks. And, this was only a stopover gap arrangement to finish an academic session. But then we've gone ahead and finished almost another academic year, which is going to be online. Now, it was in the first phase, basically, the focus was not, on creating new materials for online teaching. The focus was on that because it was in the middle of a semester. So the focus was basically on to finish the course content which was available. Now there's a challenge with media and communication education, with journalism and others, that all subjects, the diversity of subjects that you have, cannot be taught in one particular way. We have completely theory subjects, then you have completely practical subjects, and then there is another group of subjects which are partly theory and partly practical. Now, just to have one way of teaching for everything is not at all possible. And we had to devise various ways by which we could, deliver these things to the students. Like even Surbhi said, that imagine a student being taught radio, and you had to give him or her only demonstrations from the lab here, or the community radio. They themselves could not have a hands-on experience, and that initially was a big hesitancy on the part of the faculty, that how would we do this. But then once we started doing, we realized, we could teach them podcasting. We could ask them to make features and send it to us through their mobile phones, and also use other softwares to edit it. So these kinds of innovations and learning and relearning is a continuous process that the faculty in higher education and institutions of media and communication, I think, are facing everywhere. And also that we've become designers and tutors overnight. It's not only about how your course, but also the pedagogical knowledge is a prerequisite for a virtual teacher to design course. And none of us had training in that. Yes, basically the thing was that, whatever knowledge you have, how do you effectively deliver it to your students? And if you look at it in the online and face-to-face learning mode, the difference comes in three aspects. One is the space and the presence. The second is the self-presentation. And the third is the interaction. In a classroom teaching, the student is there. All of us are in the same space, both the teacher and the learners, and they can interact. And, there is a lot of thing where is there spontaneity. Whereas in a virtual classroom, the spontaneity is not there so much. And also technology itself has a way of altering both space and time. And metamorphically, they are basically compressing that space and time. Both synchronous and asynchronous classrooms are something that have become the norm now, whereas we always had a synchronous mode of teaching. Also, what kind of mode are we doing? Texting, or are we making a video presentation? All these things also needed to be considered before we could design, or before we could decide our classes. And therefore, the other thing that also came into being is that, the student, the teacher's role doesn't end only with the teaching. It also involves other aspects like the teacher-student interaction, the student-student interaction, and the student content interaction. Now, these things, really got transformed. I won't say always in a negative sense, but it was in a very positive sense. We explored fewer more areas, and we went beyond the classroom to understand a lot of this. Online teaching and learning basically require careful consideration of how technologies can facilitate this type of interaction that we are seeking with the students. And I would like to, also add that, yes, like Surbhi said, this online teaching also helped us to get international faculty to talk to our students, or international guests, or even in India, people, from the industry who are quite busy to come and work with us. So it did give an impetus to virtual mode of teaching. But we also have a specialization in communication management where our students do events. And in the last academic year, they had to do all their events online. So whether we liked it or not in the beginning, I feel they've been trained for the current trends in the industry. They conducted their events online. We have a lab newspaper which the students bring out. It used to be in a print mode because we have the Udayavani press next to us, and it's convenient for us to get them. The students also engage in physical printing of newspapers. But in the pandemic, we've shifted this to an online digital platform. So, the students have also got exposed in this way by our accidentally trying to find out these kind of opportunities to the digital mode of working, which they are now employed in. In fact, we had a 3-day event called Namangadi, which we work with the Concern for Working Children and help them market their products. And it happened smoothly online. The only difference was that we would have a lot of footfalls when we had the physical events. But because it was an online event and it was only for the first time, we did not have that kind of a footfall. But the students had a very great learning experience. So we did not miss out on any of the activities that they were doing, which they were doing physically, but we just shifted those activities to the online, and that gave them the exposure to work on the digital platforms. One aspect, this is about teaching, but something that all of us have been also grappling with is our evaluation. How do you evaluate? We were so used to the traditional mode of examination of a paper and pencil. Even though at MIC, we were not using, we had gone in the digital mode of evaluation in 2014 itself. But how do we, now evaluate when they are not there? There is no longer a teacher who is invigilating them 24/7. And therefore, the mode of the question paper itself had to change because it had to be more applied. The practical, the aspects, the students were not going to do it in front of you. They were going to do it and send it to you. So those kinds of things are something that also the evaluation mode also had to be grappled with. Yes, there were challenges in the virtual mode for both the students and the teachers. And I think all of us have adapted to it. Initial hesitancy did exist to adapt, but over a period of time, both students and faculty have learned newer methods and are relearning, in order to enhance their effectiveness of their interaction. Students still, all said and done, they still want to come back to the campus as they miss other learning experiences. It's more about socialization on the campus that the campus life provides, because Manipal has an attraction for its campus life. And in certain production-based subjects, we still have some challenges to overcome. Yes, the acceptance was because of realizing that the virtual mode of teaching is there because of the perceived usefulness and the perceived ease of use. And this will help us, develop further positive steps towards the adaptation of an online teaching mode. And like the other panelists, who are media educators, I agree that we are not going to have completely offline classes. We would have to have a hybrid mode of teaching in the future, and I foresee that. And I think a blended mode of learning would give our students an exposure to whatever technological changes are happening, as well as we could also continue with some of the traditional things that we've been doing in the classroom. So that's all from my side. Thank you.
One of the things that I keep saying, and somebody said this actually, and I didn't, and I took it from what they said, is that COVID-19 is like 9/11. 9/11 changed flying completely. I mean, those of us who've seen flying before that, you'll remember that the security checks were ridiculous. There weren't any security checks. You could actually walk up to the tarmac and then fly a plane. And you didn't have to go through the circus that you have to do just now. So that's the same thing with COVID-19. It's changed our lives completely. And it's not just education or anything else. It's also journalism. Journalism has completely changed with COVID-19. Now, the thing with that, what works, as Dr. Sai said earlier, was you have to be invested in technology right from the beginning. And you have to be ready, you have to be agile enough to move quickly and pivot. So when COVID struck and when the government decided they're going to shut down everything in 4 hours' time, we were very lucky that we were at the end of our academic year and we were able to shift. So so where I was saying that we were working with the flipped classroom where people would do their reading, their studying, whatever, and do their actual doing, because we've always, as a school, believed that you have to do real stories. You can't do a campus story. You have to go out and do real stories that actually make a difference. And so what happened, therefore, was then we were doing what other journalists were doing, and we were learning from what other journalists were doing. So our emphasis has never been on grades. By the way, we don't have an end semester or end year exams. We don't have it at all. We have rubrics and we work with the rubrics and we tell a student where she stands, depending on what they've been doing. So, so the emphasis actually shifted from when the first waves happened, our students had finished most of the course. And so it was really easy because our emphasis then was not really on how to do a story, but how are you going to be safe when you're doing a story? How are you going to go out with the total safety measures in place? And if you're not going out, that's perfectly all right. Get us a Zoom interview, get us anything else that you need, and get your sources to shoot for you and send it to us. And so we were doing what everybody else in the media stream was doing. And I think that was wonderful. The other thing that we had to focus on was also giving them support as far as trauma was concerned, because there were a lot of them who were getting quite traumatized by what was happening, even when they were covering stories in the first wave as well as in the second wave. And that was the other emphasis we laid emphasis on. So that's where we were going. And we were also able to adapt very quickly. We moved from InDesign and Quark, et cetera, because students wouldn't be able to download it. And so we found free and open source software that students could download and work with it when they needed to. So the way we've moved, we now have Zoom bulletins that are being actually done from across the country. There's one kid who's sitting in Delhi, the other one's maybe sitting in Koregaon, the other one is sitting somewhere else, and we have the bulletin happening across the country. And I think it's been a wonderful experience for the students and for us. So really, it's just been fantastic in that sense of the word. So I think it's a question of mindset more than anything else. And we made space for one-on-one interactions. We ensured that we had meetings, we had space for meetings, we had calendars where we said, if you want to meet a faculty member for a one-on-one, or we want to meet anybody for a one-on-one interaction, this is how you slot it in, you put it in on a Excel sheet, whatever, and we work towards that. So in a way, I think the learning that anybody would have from something like this is, one, invest in technology. It was basically because of our experience and ease with technology that we were able to quickly move and not lose any time or other resources. There were challenges, of course, that all of you have mentioned: the lack of nonverbal communication, misunderstandings that come up because something has not been spelled out clearly, and there's been no, there are things that people don't understand when you're trying to speak online. But investing in people's skills and integrity is really more important than investing in technology also. That's the second point. We shared information, thoughts, and ideas, not just with the students. And we said, look, we are in this together. And if you have an idea, let's work with it. So, and not just with the students, but also with their parents. We took them into confidence. We talked about how our plans were absolutely fluid for reasons beyond our control. And I think that trust and confidence took us through some of the most difficult times of the semester. And placing real learning over grades pays off in the long run. We haven't been doing that. We've been doing that right through. So every student deals with a different situation and circumstances. There were students who were sitting on their terraces. There were students who were sitting in a car when they were trying to interact with us and tell us what they were doing because they couldn't get network. So we remodeled our grading rubrics. We remodeled our methodology in order to give enough leeway to students who had all kinds of troubles to submit work or to do a story. And the focus was really not on how much they had scored, but what they had really learned. And I think it helps to think of solutions that are out of the norm. It helps to take a step forward and teach students to how to find, report, and produce stories without even leaving the safety of their homes at times. So there is, well, I agree, online learning can't replicate the real thing. In the year that just went by, we started our entire course online, but and we taught them all the works online. So the joy of it was, as one of our professors pointed out, and he teaches environment, and he said, I could speak to a student in Assam and say, tell us about the fires, tell us about the oil fires, did you go see them, can you get a picture for them? And that was just the complete joy of it. And so the thing is, it's not really, we would actually say collaboration is a great thing. So while online learning can't replicate the real thing, but there is a lot of things that can be achieved really with the right attitude and a sense of purpose and focus. So if I were to broad base our experience, and I'd say first thing, I would really recommend a learn as you do approach, because that it really results in collaborative learning. The faculty learn as much as the students do from this experience. We learn how young people use technology, how they use social media, and how they use the internet. And we learn how to open their minds to the possibility that this whole thing opens up. And so working along the lines of a media house teaches us to adapt to everything, because you have to bring out an edition, whether the world is coming to an end or not. Like I keep saying, if the world is coming to an end, and you will hear about it in the news, and they're going to have to learn how to report that, and which really helps us adapt to every situation. Since media houses these days work on deadlines that are really shortening, they use every trick in the book and outside it to ensure that the audience gets what it's looking for. And that, I think, this never say attitude really pushes you to flow through the most difficult of circumstances and get the job done. And I keep repeating this, but building trust is the most important and sustaining effort. It's to ensure that you are there with the students. You're ensuring that you're there for them at a time where they've been through this hospital visit and they just need to talk. It's not that they need to tell you what the story is. They just need to tell you how horrible it was. And they need to be able to communicate to have somebody who you would have in a newsroom, a more senior person who you could speak to and who could discuss things with you, and then talk about, okay, what's my story? And I think that really matters. I think we're running out of time and I've questions, but I think this is largely what I wanted to talk about. Thanks. I think technology is a great thing. I think it's a question of how we use it, really.